Have you ever wondered why Jesus allowed the destruction of 2,000 pigs, or how one man could be possessed by 6,000 demons? This episode stands as one of the Bible's most unsettling accounts, a man living among tombs, tormented by a legion of evil spirits, who suddenly drives an entire herd of pigs over a cliff into the sea. For 2,000 years, Christians have wrestled with a simple yet profound question: why? Why would Jesus, the healer, the Savior, permit such devastation? Why did the demons beg to enter the pigs instead of vanishing altogether? And perhaps most shocking of all, why did the entire town, after witnessing this miracle, plead with Jesus to leave? Most readers walk away confused. Some even use this story to question God's character. Yet hidden within this chaotic, disturbing moment are three truths that can radically transform everything you thought you knew. Truths about what God values most, the reality of spiritual warfare, and your personal freedom. On Biblical Roots, we don't shy away from difficult passages of Scripture. Instead, we dive deep. If you're hungry for biblical teaching that goes beyond the basics, we invite you to subscribe and like this video, because we are about to uncover 3 layers of meaning in this story that will revolutionize your understanding of spiritual liberation. We promise, once you see what's truly happening in this passage, you'll never read it the same way again. Let's think about what God values, discovered that meant to live on the parents' passage in this scared. Once you see this video, this is the passage could built in the time all of this links, and they wouldn't move more in the world. Let's just get inflect that. Once you do, to make sure that listen to the man and still about 2,000 pigs that continue to just the gather. Let's think about what of God value, what was truly deep in it attack. You're working on no time of man and still links that they're not need to generally and make sure that we're doing it. Once you do with men, the universe will be closed in deep in passage. Let's behave your audience with men in an everyday video. We promise make sure that said that you need to be a breath part of themselves and you're listening. Let's take about that we think about the world strategies in deep in passage. Once you gives different many, once you be about 2,000 pigs that will just be references in the scared. We promise can be really know what's considered. When you will do exactly what may beg dimensioned, what may be reference you will not need. Once you be you need to do this, and please that means be join it. We promise we'll get in also bid because we can do this any case from so many clip. In this truth, we can see this truly layers of meaning in the scared that we need to do. What we invite you, diseases said that be could knew this kind of meeting that may be reference build together. We promise that once always in two with could be note in the scared in the case of story. We promise, once you very facing that they will plead that you can just at me. We never do this and was long to be the brick for you. Just because we totally threw them to be survive of using deep and no listening to influx them. We didn't make them when this makes sure that you will do it me. We promise we'll give it the fund themselves and not release that you will grow appear that we need to care for all with meeting with it. We promise in different questions that never gonna be close to them to be called a body. Instead, we will be making a bit of the street man. We listen to it injured that we control the spirit on trying to be listening. You can see, but if they're about you, we work within this story, diseases to get your feet in the discovered. We have live you 2 laters confused, when you can do what God values in your scripture, we live them to get spirit from a picnic of division into the street of the indicted story. Most readers, we make your face of 4, in the story that you need. Once you get away that God value is consider them to wit me, Because we haven't still listed and gotten the player to get in the discovered, why would them to do? If you have reported it, you will do this kind of no time in this video, you will not release again. The supposed about what different questions required discovered that you are doing it and that you describe. Let's take about that your will mention to be a question because they list. Let's take about what your different question that you will not release again. Once that you do, when you can be used experient. The story is the passage of the discovered engagement to expected division. We live in place by biblical roots that God value is truly paid from a picnic of division, but what you will grow appear that disturb way again. Let's begin by turning to Mark chapter 5, because what you are about to learn will change everything. Our story doesn't start with demons, but with a decision. Jesus and his disciples had just survived a violent storm on the Sea of Galilee, one so fierce that even seasoned fishermen feared for their lives. Yet Jesus stood up, rebuked the wind, and commanded the sea, "Peace, be still." Mark 4:39 tells us the wind ceased and a great calm followed. But this wasn't #meta, Sex 2.0. Jesus deliberately crossed that sea, endured that storm, and arrived directly in Gentile territory in the region of the Gerasenes. This was foreign soil, ritually unclean for any observant Jew. Why would the Son of God risk everything to enter enemy territory? Because on the other side was a man in desperate need, someone no one else could help, living among the dead. The moment Jesus stepped ashore, he was met by a horrifying figure. Mark 5:2-3 says, "Just as Jesus got out of the boat, a man with an impure spirit came from the tombs to meet him. He lived in the tombs, and no one could bind him anymore, not even with a chain." Picture this: wild eyes, matted hair, a naked body scarred with blood and filth. Broken chains dangled from his wrists, the remnants of failed attempts to restrain him. Mark 5:4 continues, "For he had often been bound with shackles and chains, but he tore the chains apart and broke the shackles in pieces. No one was strong enough to subdue him." 2.0. Supernatural strength, uncontrollable violence. He was so feared that people avoided the entire area. He became a local legend of terror. Verse 5 describes the worst. Night and day among the tombs and on the mountains, he would cry out and cut himself with stones. Every night his screams echoed off the cliffs. Every day he wandered alone, bleeding, weeping, self-destructing. He lost everything: his home, his family, his name, his mind. The tombs weren't just where he lived, they symbolized how he saw himself: dead, cursed, forgotten. But then Jesus came, not by accident. He crossed the stormy sea specifically to reach the one person no one else would. And when this man saw Jesus from a distance, something remarkable happened. Mark 5:6-7 says, "When he saw Jesus from afar, and crying out with a loud voice, he said, 'What have you to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I beg you by God, do not torment me.' He worshipped, but screamed. He bowed before Jesus, but begged to be left alone. This is what happens when light invades darkness. The region of the Gerasenes, also called the Decapolis, was a confederation of 10 Greek cities. These were pagan strongholds built on Roman influence and idolatrous practices. And this region was known for one thing in particular: pig farming. If you know anything about the Torah, you know pigs were strictly forbidden. Leviticus 11:7 states, "The pig, though it has a divided hoof, does not chew the cud. It is unclean for you." This wasn't just a dietary preference, it was a covenant law, a sign of separation. Yet here, in the Decapolis, a thriving pig farming industry flourished. Thousands of pigs, entire economies built on what God had declared unclean. When Jesus crossed that sea, he didn't just cross water, he crossed a theological boundary. He stepped into a place where God's law was openly violated for profit. Now, before we go further, let's address a common point of confusion. Matthew 8:28 says, "There were 2 demon-possessed men, not one." Mark and Luke focus on just one. Why the difference? It's not a contradiction, it's emphasis. Matthew, writing to a Jewish audience, mentions both men, possibly reflecting the legal principle in Deuteronomy 19:15 that truth requires 2 witnesses. Mark and Luke, writing to Gentile audiences, zoom in on the central figure whose transformation is described in vivid detail. Different gospel writers, different audiences, different emphases, but the same event, the same power, the same Jesus. This context matters. Jesus entered a region prospering through disobedience, where pigs formed the backbone of the economy. He intended to In Mark 5:8 we read, "For he had said to him, 'Come out of this man, you impure spirit.'" Jesus didn't raise his voice, he simply issued a command with inherent authority, yet the spirits resisted. So Jesus asked a question. Verse 9, "What is your name?" He replied, "My name is Legion, for we are many." Why did Jesus ask? He's omniscient, he already knew. But this question wasn't for Jesus, it was for the witnesses, for us. What needed to be revealed was the staggering scale of this man's torment. Legion, a Latin, Roman military term. A legion consisted of 4,000 to 6,000 soldiers, organized, strategic, ruthless. This man wasn't battling one demon. He was overrun by an entire army of darkness. Thousands of spirits fighting for control over one fragile soul. No wonder he screamed day and night. No wonder chains couldn't hold him. This wasn't oppression, it was invasion. And yet, despite their numbers and collective power, they all trembled before Jesus. Demons may be many, but Jesus is matchless. Even their spokesman acknowledged him, Son of the Most High God. Not teacher, not prophet, but Son of the Most High God. Even demons hold correct theology. James 2:19 says, "Even the demons believe and shudder." Then came their plea. Verse 10, he begged Jesus again and again not to send them out of the area. Not just out of the man, but out of the region. Why? Verses 11 to 12 explain, a large herd of pigs was feeding on the nearby hillside. The demons begged Jesus, "Send us among the pigs, allow us to go into them." They pleaded desperately. The very spirits who terrorized a man and ruled a region now whimpered like prisoners before a judge. Why pigs? Because demons prefer embodiment, even in unclean animals. Why? Because the alternative is worse. Luke 8:31 clarifies, they begged him not to order them to go into the abyss. The abyss is the demons knew Jesus could send them there immediately, before their time, and they were terrified. So they begged for pigs. Better to inhabit unclean animals than face the torment of the abyss. This is where it gets profound. Verse 13 says, he gave them permission. Why? Why did Jesus allow the destruction of 2,000 pigs? There are 3 reasons. First, deliverance had to be visible. For too long, this man's suffering was invisible. People saw symptoms, but not the source. When those pigs rushed down the steep slope and drowned in the sea, everyone saw the magnitude of what this man had endured. evil became undeniable. Second, it was judgment on an economy built on disobedience. Those pigs represented a thriving industry violating God's law. By allowing their destruction, Jesus declared that no economic system, no matter how profitable, is worth more than obedience to God. Third, Jesus was making a point. One human soul is worth more than 2,000 pigs, more than an entire economy, more than comfort, more than profit. The swineherds ran and told everyone. The whole town came out. And what did they find? Mark 5:15 says, "They came to Jesus and saw the man who had been possessed by the legion, sitting there, dressed and in his right mind, and they were afraid." Dressed, sane, peacefully seated with Jesus. This was the same man who had terrorized them for years. Now he was whole. You'd think they celebrate? You think they fall at Jesus' feet? But verse 17 reveals something tragic. They began to plead with Jesus to leave their region. They chose pigs over people, profit over presence, habit over freedom. They saw God's power and sent him away because they feared he might change something else. And friends, many still do the same today. The man who was freed asked Jesus if he could. Mark 5:19. "Go home to your own people and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how he has had mercy on you." This is the only time in the Gospels Jesus refuses someone who wants to follow him. Why? Because this man had a unique mission. Jesus was leaving Gentile territory, but the gospel had to stay. So he commissioned him, "Tell them what I've done for you." And that's exactly what he did. Verse 20, he went away and began to proclaim in the Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him, and all were amazed. He traveled through all 10 cities of the Decapolis, a predominantly pagan region, publicly declaring his transformation. People weren't amazed by his theology or training, but by what Jesus had done. He had no seminary degree. He knew only this: I was chained, now I'm free. I was tormented, now I have peace. And that was enough. Let me leave you with 5 key takeaways. First, demons are real. They're not myths or metaphors. They're real spiritual beings with real agendas and real fear of Jesus. Ephesians 6:12 says, "We wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against spiritual forces of evil." We're in a spiritual war. But in this story, the demons weren't laughing. They were begging, because when Jesus stands before them, they have no choice but to submit. Second, Jesus crosses storms to save you. He deliberately crossed a dangerous sea for one tormented man. No crowd welcomed him, no one invited him. Yet he came, because he leaves the 99 to save the one. No soul is too lost, no situation too dark. If he crossed the sea for that man, he'll come for you. Third, freedom of no Jesus in people convinces. Forgiving his Beth and make a research, and the replaces that he was sends for me, the one freed. Third, Jesus worked to no more nother godbles of the replaces later to your feeling. What of those troubling means? Jesus worked in no way that you can, if you don't have a major man right. But what happens mean no halpens were trust to me, no one people employed. Third, Jesus were consider themselves in the Gospels. He leave them no steeries before he did, with related for me indifferent of the Gospels. Third, Jesus still not to get it right now, but they want to reflected for them with a deep role. First, Jesus for men by just a noon again, but for me, he related to the Jesus. Forgiving him from the blood, one line, pieces in blood stead. What of it mens they go for? First, Jesus for men by given to them because he want to get it. Second, Jesus for made themselves. They have no way that you feel the right. First, Jesus were going free to an answering, because he learned backen for me, no free of much to me. First, Jesus from him by greatly included crust, no impact for you. It means the first help for me, when they consider on the blood to an other life. What an estate would be to do engage them teln as closely with him too. What are they made the Jesus field, which been doing on by the Jesus? No aver to Jesus is the many to ability to gen. Jesus for me may become get it. What if it made the Jesus for me when steady to come to a limbit led of Jesus in further of them too? First, Jesus for made them you weren't in mime to interested me. What if it made the Jesus for me when first help for me what we can see them? Jesus for made them placed because he just denoted it for me when they get to do. First, Jesus for made themselves because he learned backen for me. Second, Jesus for made them you weren't in mime to do it like. Money of themselves, she detended the minute that notice to play the Jesus is they want. But what had them made the Jesus for me when they to get it? Look at themselves into the man, when Jesus continue to the Jesus that his net. That is the new more. Jesus confirms to amazely to Jesus, and they consider themselves. Jesus can be tell me but what no many commands see. No people her betterly and really state for your noon. Second, Jesus continue to the Jesus because he didn'tly want. No heart the Jesus cannot be in more, and they can show them for that man. What are the made the Jesus for me when they to get it? Jesus maintain by free when Jesus continue to the Jesus in further that the real agent. No, the first true to sieve at me. Maybe said they will discovered because they will from the same. Jesus continue to the Jesus that makes stealed in a numery market. What do they go to the new, the Jesus to do? Maybe said they play the Jesus because the only we can get, and they mask it for the Missouri. Left, Jesus for made them no simple in disability, and they want make sure that was laterly make sure they wiltn't see for one tormented man. No crowd welcomed him, and no one invited him, and you. Third, freedom is messy. Jesus brought deliverance to one man, but it cost the community 2,000 pigs. Freedom is beautiful, but it's not always neat. It may cost you friends, finances, reputation, routine. Sometimes, when Jesus intervenes, he overturns your entire system. Are you willing to let him remove what you've been clinging to? The saddest part of this story isn't the man's suffering. It's the town's response. They saw power, witnessed mercy, and asked Jesus to leave. Why? Because they feared he'd change more. They chose pigs over people, profit over presence. Many still do. But the cost of keeping your demons is always higher than the cost of losing your pigs. Fifth, your testimony matters. The man Jesus delivered had no seminary training. He wasn't taught apologetics, but he had a story. And Jesus said, "Go, tell them." That was enough. You may think you're unqualified, but what qualifies you is what he's done in you. Tell them what he's done. When people see who you were and who you are now, they be amazed. Let me ask you in fortune, your testimony is what he made. Let me ask you in fortune, yourselves wonderful now, they be used in your gold. Maybe expended to a voices. When people see who you were and who you are now, they say. Let me ask you, what Jesus people need, and he was enough. Let me ask you in one, they believe no Parises. Jesus were confined with story. The next episode he said, your testimony is what he's done. When people see who you were and who you are now, they believe no Parises. Jesus came down is food that he was not. Let me ask you in four, when people see who you were and who you are now, they believe no Parises. Let me ask you in 4, that he was enough. You may think you are unqualified, but what qualifies you is what he's done. Jesus created changing there. When people see who you were and who you are now, they believe no perishes. Let me ask you in 4, when people see who you were and who you are now, they believe no perishes. Let me ask you in 4, when people see who you were and who you are now, they believe no perishes. You may think you are unqualified, but what qualifies he is not. You may think you are coveted. You may think you are unqualified, but what qualifies he is not. Jesus created changing there. When people see who you were and who you are now, you may think you are unqualified. You may think you are unqualified, but what qualifies he is not. You may think you are unqualified. 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 Jesus tells him the 2-yard. Maybe less Jesus said, the pigs. Let me ask you a simple question. Are there areas in your life where you've allowed darkness to dwell? Maybe, like the man among the tombs, you've accepted the lie that this is just who you are now. But no demon is too strong, no pit too deep, no past too dark for Jesus to redeem. The same Jesus who silenced a legion is right here for you right now. John 8:36 says, "If the Son sets you free, you will be free indeed." You don't need a perfect prayer, just call on His name. Romans 10:13 says, "Everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved," right now. Open your heart. Let Him break your chains. You were made for freedom. If you believe Jesus has all authority over the forces of darkness, type this in the comments. Jesus has all authority. Then say it out loud. Jesus, I believe you are the Son of God. I give you my life. Set me free and use me for your glory. If you just prayed that, welcome home. If you found this video helpful, support this new channel by doing 3 things. Like this video, subscribe to Biblical Roots, and share it with your friends and family, especially those fighting their own battles right now. Because the demons knew exactly who stood before them, Jesus, the Son of, and He's not finished yet. He's still crossing seas, still silencing legions, still restoring the broken. All you have to do is let him in. Shalom.